So again, thank you everyone for taking the time this morning to hear testimony from myself and from current educators within Detroit Public Schools. In respect of time, I want to kind of expedite through some of these slides so that we can hear from our teachers who have taken the greatest distance in getting here this morning. We have here joined with me Mr. Phil Fisher, who is from Bagley Elementary School. We have Lasita Walker to my far right, has a business degree, master's in education, and special education specialist. Kim Namlowski, also a literacy and special education master's educator from Mann Elementary, and Willia Vanessa Dawson with a BS in computer science and a master's from Paul Robeson. Education is a civil right. We are constitutionally bound. 1963, Section 2, Article 8 of our state constitution tells us that the legislature shall maintain and support a system of free public elementary and secondary schools as defined by law. Every school district shall provide for the education of its pupils without discrimination, religion, creed, race, color, or national origin. Under the state constitution in 1963, Michigan children shall have a right to a free, quality, equitable public education. We're not doing that. Michigan ranks 35 in the nation on Quality Counts report in January 2016. That's unacceptable for all of our children. 30 years after the 1963 amendments, we see the starting of the gamble on education. Michigan begins gambling leading to Proposal A, which was supposed to address the disproportionate amount we have with respect to our retirement system and adequately funding education. The passage of public school academy laws. At that time, DPS enrollment was 183,000 students, 183,151 students. The fund balance at that time was $37 million. We see the inception of 9 charter schools on Michigan's landscape. From that point forward, we see the growth of public school academies, and then years later, the uncapping of charters, which has had a number of unintended consequences in Detroit and mostly in communities, urban communities. And you've heard that discussed by the parents represented here today. Looking at the growth from 1994 to now, we see the impact of it has had on Detroit Public Schools. 1994 having 182,916 students, now to 46,300. The governance model that you talked about, DPS did have a surplus during even the takeover, the state takeover that was put in place by then Governor Jennifer Granholm. But even prior to that, from Public Act 10, we had a surplus in 1999, a $93 million surplus. And you can read this chart in your own time because it traces over time the governance history and the impact of state takeover and how much that's causing Michigan taxpayers. Under Governor Engler, PA 10 of 1999 was enacted to create a mayoral-appointed school reform board, which more so dealt with how do we address passing out contracts and building infrastructure. In March 2009, Governor Granholm appointed the district's first emergency financial manager, and there we have had 5 emergency managers, 4, and our 5th emergency managers with Judge Rhodes. We know the impact of Detroit-only policy that has failed miserably with the EAA. It was created in 2011. I don't have to reiterate all the facts of its failure. But we know that it is creating a $50 million hole in DPS's operating budget. So the impact of the increased deficit has been exacerbated by failed policies that pit districts against each other and fail our children. If we look at these graphs and look at the average foundation allowance expenses between traditional Detroit public schools and our average charter schools, if we look at the blue area, we have approximately $4,188 going into classroom instruction, and in a charter school, average charter school, $6,581. DPS is encumbered by the debt that you see highlighted in the red from the MIPSers, of which charters don't pay into, or at a very small rate. Also, the long-term debt that we're talking about, which was created under state control. And the choice that the parents spoke about with respect to transportation that is not fully funded or shared between charter and traditional public schools, that gap needs to be closed. How much does K through 12 education really cost? I think what I've seen in my first term in the legislature is that we're putting the cart before the horse. I think one of the smartest things that was done was actually passing a bill to ensure that we do get it right, that we do find out how much it costs to educate our children, and certainly the amount of it costs to educate our children with special needs. I would, venture to say that out of 110 people in the House, some of us have some learning differences, perhaps some more than others, but some of us have learning differences. Amen. And we've coped with our learning styles and became successful adults. But we have to also put an infrastructure in place to support all of our children with learning differences. If this study that we voted for was important enough to vote and pass, and to put into DT&B the money that was necessary to conduct this study, and the study is due on March 31st, we're making a decision 2 weeks before the report is due. And I think that's very uninformed and irresponsible on our part. We must attract and retain high-quality teachers. There's a direct correlation between education attainment levels and rates of incarceration. I know one of the former members brought people up who had experienced incarceration. And right now, the way our education system is going, we are increasing the pipeline to prison instead of to higher education and career and workforce. In rural, urban, and communities with high concentrations of poverty, we have greater challenges. Students with greater needs require exemplary teachers. Increasing student proficiency demands smaller teacher-to-student ratio. You heard Mr. Clark talking about his son. We have to make sure that we provide that service. And if you look at this graph that you can look at in your own time, we see where Detroit is on the graph of poverty. DPS provides a disproportionate amount of special education services. Lasita will get into this a little bit more, but if you look at the full-time equivalents that DPS provides in this graph versus the EAA versus the public school academies throughout Wayne County, you'll find that in that first column it's totally disproportionate. DPS has the lion's share and the lion's share budget of costs that goes along with this without receiving the additional needed funding to really level the playing field. Yes, there are additional dollars that come from the federal level to address this, but it is falling much shorter than what the outcome and what the expenditures are in providing this education system. I've talked to many of you about the energy bills and about the infrastructure that's been created to support a whole community, and how if people come off that grid, the support that needs to be provided to ensure it stays in place. Well, our public education system does not get to turn away any student. They may go to some of our charter schools, and what I found as a former teacher, many of them will return after count day, leaving the burden on our teachers to still accept them. And not just in DPS, in all of our traditional public schools. So it's our responsibility to create a landscape in Michigan that doesn't pit traditional public against charter. How do we work in a collaborative way to ensure one Michigan and a stronger academic trajectory for all of Michigan's children? That's our constitutional responsibility. Establishing a strong academic foundation. Establish these partnerships that will look from cradle to career on how we support all Michigan children. We need to adequately fund education, not just in Detroit, but throughout the entire state. A possible partnership with hospitals for prenatal care, parent engagement. We have some responsibilities that we need to make sure that our parents step up to the plate, perhaps incentivizing that and addressing that. Looking at a universal pre-K system that will ensure our children are on the right trajectory. I had an opportunity to work on a kindergarten readiness project with UCLA in Michigan and found that our children are grossly unprepared for kindergarten. We have to close the gap on poverty and academic achievement because this data shows how children in poverty lag behind their counterparts who have a much stronger and robust economically sound foundation. We have to ensure that we secure pathways for education and career paths for the parents also. I discussed this with our mayor. Putting parents to work, finding jobs so that you impact that family's bottom line financially, you impact that child. Wraparound services and tutoring must be funded, not just mandated. Establish a framework to support parent engagement and, yes, accountability. I tell my parents all the time, it was not enough of them coming to parent-teacher conference. So we must work together to ensure that accountability framework. Funding and ensuring that we have social work professionals on hand throughout the day to deal with the challenges that we see. Increasing the pipeline of higher education and workforce will require greater investments in career and tech education. Many of my colleagues came out to Detroit and Bright Hawk just recently and looked at the programs that we have. Many of those children will be able to go right into the workforce after high school. We can do that as Michigan, putting more people to work. Establish more workforce internship programs that ensure job placement after high school, dual enrollment, and free college. Increasing teacher efficacy. These teachers are all master level teachers, and Detroit has a lion's share of master teachers. We need to make sure that we support efficiency not only at the school level, but at the university level. Perhaps tracking the portfolio of teachers from universities to ensure that they are doing their jobs as well. I don't want to eat up the most of the time because I really want the message from our teachers to be heard. But many of these solutions that you've put forward are not leveling the playing field, and that's what we have to do. Unfortunately, in America, most of our focus is on sports and not on education. But if we truly refocus our priorities, it will be on leveling the playing field for education. I want to yield the rest of my time so that we can hear from our teachers. And many of you, they know that some of these bills were created after the action of them standing up. I want to yield my time now to teacher Mr. Fisher.
Thank you and good morning. Thank you for your time today. I'm used to talking to 8- and 9-year-olds, so talking to adults is a welcome change. So thank you. My name is Phil Fisher. I teach at Bagley Elementary in Detroit, where I've taught for the past 24 years. And the one reason that Sherry asked me to speak today was about our teachers and our students. And starting in about 2010, teachers were asked by the state-appointed emergency manager, Robert Bob, to loan the district almost $10,000 each. That means the top-level teachers and the bottom-level teachers had to pay the same amount. I will be honest, we didn't like that, but we did it. We were assured that would help get rid of the deficit. That would also help ensure better schools for Detroit Public Schools. It did not happen. Teachers continued to advocate for the children. We were given cut after cut in our health care, our pay, each time assured by an emergency manager, one after another, after another, after another. This is going to solve the problem. This is going to get rid of the deficit. All of a sudden, our schools are going to start to get better. But it did not happen. Teachers continue to advocate for our students. I've been asked many times, why do I continue to teach in Detroit when I could teach somewhere else, getting paid more? Why do I've been offered other jobs by friends in the private sector to come work with them, but why do I continue to work in Detroit Public Schools? Why do my colleagues continue to work in Detroit Public Schools? Because we love the children. They're our children. We feel that if we don't advocate for them and advocate for the parents in many instances as well, then we're not doing our job. We took an oath to advocate for children in Detroit, and that's what we do. I'd also like to give credit to our students. They persevere day after day coming to school through different conditions than you and I came to school, different conditions than your children go to school every day, and I applaud them. Just one example, and this is not a normal example, but one example is D'Angelo, who is in my class, who lived in a rental home where there was no furnace, no hot water heater during the middle of winter in Michigan. The landlord promised and promised that it would be taken care of, and it was not. D'Angelo got up every day, came to school on time, clean in his dress code, every day made it to school and made it on the honor roll. I don't know about you, but sometimes I have trouble making it to work on time when the coffee isn't ready. to go through without hot water or a furnace, I don't know if I could do that. So I applaud our students. Not all of them are in circumstances like that, but all of them persevere to get their education. On a side note, when I found out, I talked with a lawyer friend of mine in Detroit who got in touch with a pro bono lawyer, and within 2 weeks, they had a furnace, they had a hot water heater. I don't say that to pat myself on the back, but that is the dedication many teachers in Detroit have. We advocate for our children, we don't turn a blind eye to it, and we deal with the issues as they come up. And I would just ask that you would do that as well today. Thank you.
Pam.
Good morning. I am Pam Namislowski. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a fourth grade teacher at Mann Elementary. I've been teaching in Detroit and at Mann for 24 years. This year, teachers became determined to speak up for our students, and we felt that after years of not being heard, we had a moral obligation to do so. As a result, you saw on your TV screens and your news feeds the reality of what our students live with every day. While the physical conditions are certainly bad, they are only one of many obstacles that the students face in our district. And like Phil, I'm often asked why I choose to stay in Detroit. Why not go to the suburbs where conditions would be easier, pay would be more? And just like Phil said, I stay because like so many other Detroit public school teachers, I'm committed to the children of Detroit. We have a strong bond to the children that unless you're an educator, it's probably hard to truly understand. This bond is strengthened by the adversities and challenges we face together. Teachers give up time with their own children to support our students because, as Phil said, we consider them our children. We call them our children. We call them our kids because that's what they are to us. We believe in the children of DPS. We know and see what they can accomplish. It is extraordinarily frustrating beyond words to know that if they just had more of what they need and what they deserve, they would be able to achieve so much more. They need more support services. They need smaller class sizes. They need opportunities to participate in physical education, in music and art like other kids do. Last year at Mann School, we had 47 students in our fourth grade class all year long. We made phone calls. We wrote letters, all to no avail. We were a priority school. We have since been taken off that list. A priority school means if your test scores do not improve, you may be closed down. So they put 47 students in our fourth grade class. Our kindergarten classes had over 40 in them for over half of the school year. While we were called a priority school, it certainly didn't seem as if our children were a priority to anyone. The reason given for this egregious class size, which is a problem far too common across the district, is that there were no teachers to hire to create a new classroom. This is not surprising considering the huge discrepancy in pay between teachers in Detroit and in the suburbs. Our students need and deserve the very best teachers. They need highly qualified teachers who understand the unique needs that poverty creates. DPS teachers are the ones who have been and will continue to be on the front lines with our students. We fight a war against poverty and inequity every single day. We celebrate our students' successes in spite of the many obstacles that are placed in front of us. We marvel at their strength and their perseverance, even in the most challenging of circumstances. We, more than anyone, know what is best for our students. We are their voice, and we ask that they finally be heard. We ask that they are given the conditions, the resources, and the support that they are deserving of. Thank you.
Good morning. As you can tell, I'm very nervous. My name is Walia Dawson from Paul Robeson Malcolm X Academy, sixth grade teacher. Like my colleagues, I've worked in Detroit Public Schools for over 20 years, having worked at General Motors, Eastern Michigan University, Baker College, Jacksonville Electric Authority, and Unisys Computer Corporation. I come to Detroit Public Schools with a lot to offer. And like Phil and Pam, my family is so not understanding of why I continue to stay. I have health issues, but I go to work anyway because we love our kids. And I just can't stress this to you all enough. This is not just about money. This is about fairness. This is about teachers that actually love our children. We connect with our children. For some of us, we were those children. I'm born and raised Selma, Alabama, 1961, coming up in the South. I was determined to be the kind of teacher that I had. And so I left the corporate world and came to Detroit Public Schools to teach, and that is where I remain. I'm reminded, when I first started teaching, we lost several students, 5 to be exact. I was teaching at McNair Middle School, used to be Jackson Middle School on the lower east side of Detroit. One of the students we buried was killed in a crack house. His mother was in the streets. He had 2 siblings that he was trying to take care of, and he got killed. We buried him. I did the obituary. To this day, it just tugs at my heart because you guys just don't understand what we go through. We're not just teachers. We're mothers to those children. In some cases, mothers that they'll never have. We're fathers to those children. We're counselors. We're nurturers to those children because they need us. I thought when I came to Detroit Public Schools, because I came from corporate world, and at that time I did not have a degree in teaching. I came with my computer science degree thinking I can just teach computer class. You know, I could just teach. It takes more than just a degree to be a teacher. First of all, it takes passion. Secondly, you can't just come out of college thinking you can manage a classroom. You have not been taught that. You cannot come out of college thinking that you can face these students with all the challenges that they have, face them, and bring to them what they deserve without feeling some kind of stress yourself. I took away from my son plenty of times. He was angry at me. I was a single parent. He was angry at me because he always said that I cared more about my kids in school than I did him. And in some cases, I did. And I found myself guilty, feeling guilty, because we put up with so much working with DPS for so long. And we never said a word. We failed our kids. We never said a word. We just continued to put up with it. Who loans their employer money just to keep other teachers from being laid off? Who does that? We did it. And teachers still got laid off. We took 10% pay cut, shrinking health care, but rising health care costs. I am a rheumatoid arthritis patient. I sit in my classroom with tape around my window, and this is no joke. I cover my knees because the window comes through the air. My desk is sitting near the window. My kids, I explained to them thoroughly how some days Ms. Dawson just doesn't feel like getting up because my knees are hurting, but you know what? I still teach. My children meet me at the door because I can't always carry my bags upstairs. You know what they do? They take my bags upstairs for me. They wait at the door. They take my bags downstairs for me. This is my commitment to Detroit Public Schools. And I'm not going to turn and run away because we're facing bad times. I could go just about anywhere right now and do just about whatever I put my mind to. And that's what I'm trying to teach to my students. I'm teaching my students perseverance. When times get hard, you don't just walk away. You don't just settle for what's given to you. You fight for what you know is right. A public education, equity in education is a human right. And I don't know why people think we're so wrong for standing up for what's right for our children. Sure, I could make much more money in the computer science field, much more. But I tell you, it's not about money. It is not about money. I am from the South, born and raised, and I know nothing other than the noble profession that teaching used to be. Teaching was honorable. It's not that anymore because it seems like teaching is not about education. It's more about politics. Why? And I just want to ask you one question. When did we become the enemy? When did teachers become the enemy? We're not. We are not. Thank you.
My name is Lasita Walker, and I am an instructional specialist with Detroit Public Schools. I am a product of Detroit Public Schools. I have a BS in Business Administration with a major in Computer Information Systems. I have a master's in Urban Education. I have an EDS in Learning Disabilities and an endorsement in Mathematics. I am here with Detroit Public Schools because I choose to be here with Detroit Public Schools. I have 4 children of my own, all which have attended at some point through their K-12 career a Detroit Public School. 2 of my eldest children have graduated from Detroit Public Schools. One with an MBA and the other one a senior this year at Howard University. My 2 younger ones, I had to move from DPS. Why? I had to move them to my neighborhood school in Southfield. Why again? Because I couldn't get home in time to pick them up from school. Why? Because I provided after-school academic and social support to my DPS students. I couldn't see about my own kids because I was seeing about my DPS kids who needed me more. Why? Because I'm a dedicated and determined teacher to make a positive difference in our children's lives. Here's the deal, and it's something that many of you seem to be forgetting, is that our children, many of them and not all of them, are products of generational economic and social poverty. Poverty, generational poverty. You don't teach children of generational poverty the same that you teach children in the suburbs. They need more. They need more because children of generational poverty come to school with greater deficits. They come to school with less background knowledge. They come to school with fewer words. They come to school oftentimes with less family support. All of this support that they're lacking, all of these deficits that they have, they accumulate over the years and students become further and further behind academically. So that's some of the problems that we're having to try and work with. If you all have heard of the Matthew effect, you'll know that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Kids that come to school and they have rich vocabulary and they have rich background knowledge, they become richer. Those that don't, that have the challenges, if they have learning disabilities or if they have a cognitive impairment, it becomes more and more difficult for them to excel. So in essence, the gap between those who are rich and the gap between those that are poor becomes greater. And that's part of the problem that we're dealing with academics advancement in our district. It's not an excuse, it's just the facts. Those are just the facts. Let me speak to you for a moment about our special education services. Approximately 20% of our school district receives special education support. Approximately 20%. I think the information that was up there earlier, it talked about our district when we had about 52,000 students. Now we have 47,000 students. What we realize is that one size does not fit all. Detroit Public Schools offers a continuum of special education services to address the needs of our students. The charter schools don't do that. We accept all students. The charter schools don't have the capacity and their teachers don't have the expertise to service students with special education needs based on their IEPs. They don't have it. So oftentimes, as was stated earlier, those students, after fourth Wednesday count, oftentimes come back with us, oftentimes without the money. We service all students. We turn no one away. Again, we accept and provide services for students in neighboring communities as well that don't offer those specific services that are required to be in compliance with the IEP. Our Turning Point School in Detroit, which is our emotional impairment school, it's a school that all cities in Wayne County can send their students to. We accept students from Grosse Pointe. We accept students from Highland Park. We accept students from Harper Woods. Those students come to Detroit because the other districts cannot support those students academically as far as it relates to their individual educational plans. What I want to say, though, is that educating, again, our special education students is very, very expensive. It's very expensive. Many of the kids who fall under special education have not even been identified. What we know is that during our regular school day, we provide mental health, we provide social services, we provide social support, we also provide health services. In several of our buildings, we have clinics in those buildings. I think the representative here, Sherry, mentioned earlier that we need to have increased wraparound services. Those wraparound services provide support for our students before and after school. Research says that our best teachers need to be assigned to our students with the greatest needs. Our best teachers. How can we attract the best teachers and how can we keep the best teachers if our pay is not equitable? If it's not fair and equitable to communities that are surrounding the city? Let me, for one moment, before we leave and get too far offhand, the chairman, sir, I'd like to give you some clarification on the deficit. We did have a surplus when the financial manager is what he was called initially. It was a financial manager that came into Detroit, and they came in, we did have a surplus, but actually that person came in because Detroit had received a $1.5 billion bond. That's why that financial person was put in place. They didn't come in to address academics. What happened as the years passed by, I think within 4 years, we had a deficit of $48 million. After that deficit, let me share with you, sometime during that time, the financial manager started delving into academics, which was not what he was slated to be there for. He was slated to be there for finances. After that time, the citizens of Detroit voted that they did not want an emergency manager. They did not want an emergency manager. They only wanted that person to remain there to handle the finances. Once that vote was took place and the citizens actually said no financial manager, our wonderful governor, Governor Snyder, changed the law to make the city of Detroit have to have an emergency manager. So do some fact-finding on that, and you'll find out that what I'm sharing with you is true.
No,
And after the fourth,
I'm going to stop you there
Okay.
because you challenged me.
okay,
This is a DPS audit I'm looking at.
Okay.
The numbers I got from the House Fiscal Agency. I'm going to do something I never thought I would do in my life.
Okay.
I'm going to stand up for the Honorable Jennifer M. Granholm.
okay.
She can't send an emergency financial manager.
It wasn't an
to a
emergency.
play. It was an emergency financial manager, and the deficit was $218 million. That's the audited number.
Okay.
That's the audited number. She sent Robert Bob in as a financial manager. You are correct, he drifted off into academics, but the audit shows $218 million.
It was Kenneth
I don't
Burnley.
think the governor of Michigan broke the law and said, let's send a financial manager to a place where we've got a surplus. I don't think she did that, and the numbers that I've got from the House Fiscal Agency tell me otherwise.
Okay, I was referring to 1999.
And I'm not saying, okay,
when the
I'm talking about
financial manager was sitting-
2009.
Okay, I'm talking about
talking about-
1999, when the financial manager was first put in place, 1990. Okay,
That's, no.
okay.
I think we got the right numbers now. I'm talking about 2009.
I'm talking 1999,
Okay,
when we had the
that
district
was
had a
with Governor
surplus.
Engler and the school board and all that stuff.
And Kenneth Burnley came
So
in.
but we keep hearing that, you know, the local board didn't run up any debt at all. Well, they did. That's why Governor Granholm sent an EFM.
Mr. Chair,
in
if I may, I don't want,
2009.
I see we losing members. Ms. Walker is addressing what happened under Governor Engler.
Okay.
And that trajectory, I'm sure, will be shared by our school board member, and so I don't want to use up the time that he would be utilizing to speak. So if we can just finalize with
I
respect
just want to stand up for the good name of our governor.
Well, she had
Governor
her,
Granholm.
well, she had a role in it too. So all hands are not clean in putting
Thank
emergency
you, Al.
managers in our city.
Yeah. So what we want to know, what we want you to take away, though, is that the deficits that our children share and the deficits in our financial budget is something that needs to be handled. We didn't create the deficit, the teachers did not, and it cannot be solved on our backs. We've given all that we can give.
Thank you all so much. My recommendation is, number one, is to look towards the adequacy study that would be out March 31st. I think any decisions made prior to that are really uninformed and irresponsible, and I certainly oppose the entire package of all of the bills that's been set forward for DPS now. And I'll share this presentation with you via email. Thank you.